Poštovanje, gledate podcast EU za tebe. Moje ime je Ivan Simonović, a na početku ovog podcasta govorit ćemo o Švedskoj i njenom predsjedavanju u proteklih 6 mjeseci Evropskom unijom. Sa nama je ambasadorka Švedske u Beogradu, Annika Ben David. Välkomna till våra EU-podd.
Tack så mycket. Hvala puno. Hvala lepo.
So just to begin with, which European value you cherish the most and why would that value be significant for Serbia?
Wow, that's a challenge to pick one. There are so many values that I cherish, but it would have to be two. Cooperation, overcoming past grievances, coming together, understanding that if 27 member states will agree on something, will need to agree on something, we all have to give and take, right? So cooperation and building a community for the collective good, finding the common denominator that benefits everyone. But the second one would be democracy. And within the concept of democracy comes all kinds of other values or benefits, like transparency of institutions, accountability for citizens, free media, a vibrant civil society, the oxygens to any democracy, and what has built our own country strong. Not only just and fair, but also economically prosperous, because we see a link between a strong state of democracy and also economic development and political stability.
Mm-hmm. We often talk about how would EU make Serbia better, but in which way Serbia can make EU better?
The EU needs Serbia. Serbia is a natural part of Europe and has always been. We want vigorously to extend European membership to Serbia and the Western Balkans. That is part of the European family already. So it's just formalizing this state of affairs. And Serbia can bring so much to the European Union. Serbia has a very talented workforce, both skilled workers, but also so many innovators, brilliant students, researchers, entrepreneurs. Serbia has a very good education system that fares really well in comparison with European levels of education. Serbia is also a country that has a high degree of gender equality, which is also a factor for success. That is the experience of my own country. So we do need Serbia among ourselves.
Nice. In the beginning of the year, Sweden took over the presidency of the Council of Europe for 6 months. Were all opportunities used to speed up the enlargement process?
Sweden took over the Council of the European Union, that's right. The EU presidency. It took place in an unprecedented time, I would say, for European and perhaps global history. Our presidency has been marred by Russia's full-on invasion against Ukraine. Russia, a nuclear power, warning about the use of nuclear power against a Slavic Orthodox brother country that was neutral and democratic. And this has ruined the European security order. Is a watershed moment, a tectonic shift in Europe and in the world. And the attack of Russia against Ukraine that started in 2014 and then led to the full-scale invasion in 2022 is an attack not only on the territory of Ukraine, but also against the people of Ukraine, of course, but on all of us in Europe. It is an attack on European values, of the values that underpin our European community. So therefore, it is a threat to the rules-based international order and multilateral cooperation that smaller states like Sweden and Serbia depend on. Because if we don't have a rules-based international order, meaning a world order where we cooperate and where we have agreed on certain rules of interaction and coexistence in the world, which is international law, then we have a multipolar world, like the authoritarians like to express it. That is a world where power and might decides the rules of the game, and where greater powers claim the right to have spheres of interest. And that is why the Swedish presidency made it its top priority for these 6 months, when we were at the helm of the European Union, to support Ukraine in any way possible, be it diplomatically, politically, by arms, militarily, in humanitarian assistance terms, and in whatever way it's possible, and to uphold the unity, the unique unity that the EU shares. Just yesterday we learned that the 11th sanctions package against Russia has been adopted. I think this unity among member states that was almost immediate after the 24th of February is unique in the EU's history. The EU has stood out on the world scene not only as an economic powerhouse, a very attractive region for economic purposes, and also a great donor of funds beyond our own union, but also as a strong political actor and a security operator. So the EU has come together in defense of the rules-based international order, and we will stand with Ukraine for as long as it lasts. Now, back to your question. Please remind me your question.
Were all opportunities used to speed up the enlargement process?
Right, back to enlargement. A very good start of the Swedish EU presidency, I think, was the Tirana summit. That was the first summit for European heads of governments outside the EU, in the Western Balkans, I wanted to say. That took place in Tirana in December, so it was a couple of weeks before we became presidents. That was a great opportunity for EU leaders to recommit to enlargement. There is no hesitation. The EU vigorously pushes enlargement for the reasons I spoke about initially, that the Western Balkans belongs to the European family, but also because of the new geopolitical urgency. There is a momentum after Russia's attack on Ukraine, full-on invasion against Ukraine. And throughout our presidency, our message has been to encourage Serbia and other candidate countries to make use of this opportunity. You have Brussels' ears and eyes. You have the attention of all the EU capitals. We want to make it possible in any way for Serbia and the other candidate countries to advance on their EU paths, to accelerate reforms. Already now the EU is bringing 400 million euros a year to Serbia in order to be able to meet the criteria, the very tough criteria, I grant it, for membership. This is also what the EU Opportunity Week that is just about to finish here in Belgrade is about, to show the opportunities through EU programs and funds, what it means to citizens. Now, my foreign minister, Tobias Billström, visited Serbia in April. EU integration minister Tanja Miščević visited Sweden no less than twice during her presidency, and we also held bilateral political consultations in April when Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs Goran Aleksić visited Sweden. So we have been, and are still for 10 days, a very committed president who wants to see Serbia come much closer to an EU membership, but with a caveat that enlargement lies in the candidate country's hands. We want to make everything possible for Serbia to join, but the work has to be done by Serbia itself. And for that, we need a strong commitment to reforms and to live up to the very stringent criteria. We know this is a challenge, but it is important to remember that the EU is not only about money. Sure, we always talk about how much the EU is bringing to the Serbian population, but the EU is also a community of values. It's a political union. It is a peace project in the end. In the beginning, it wasn't. It remains a peace project, and it's very important to embrace those values. And that's why the EU keeps on insisting in its encouragement to Serbia to align itself with the EU's common foreign and security policy. It is absolutely crucial that Serbia, as our partner, as our potential member, will take a stand and harmonize its foreign policy with regards to Russia in particular. This is a watershed moment, as I said, and a geostrategic choice needs to be done.
A little bit more about the presidency. Sweden had 4 principles for this presidency. Can you tell us something about it?
Sure. My pleasure. First of all, the overriding priority I already made reference to, and that was to uphold EU unity when it comes to supporting Ukraine. And there, as I said, I'm very pleased that we have succeeded with the culmination now yesterday of the 11th sanctions package. The 4 priorities, as you correctly say, first of all, to safeguard security for EU citizens. And this also is a reference to Russia's full-scale invasion. The second one is the green transition. To bring the green transition forward, securing possibilities for innovation, for industry and for citizens so that they can enjoy a good quality of life with better health, better air, better water, better soil. The third criteria has to do with competitiveness, to strengthen and nurture European Union competitiveness, to secure the jobs for the future, to keep the European Union the attractive economic actor it is. And the last one is what I already made reference to safeguard the EU fundamental values. And what do we mean with that? It means the political, democratic values that are the cornerstones, the tenet of the European Union: democracy, rule of law, and human rights. Because without that, we are left to a state of nature where the mightiest decides the destiny of others. So, and in today's world, where democracy is sliding back and authoritarianism is gaining ground, where more people actually today live in authoritarian systems or semi-authoritarian systems than democratic systems, we need to stand up for democracy. This is why the EU Minister of Sweden yesterday and the day before hosted a big conference, 2-day conference in Stockholm on the protection of the rule of law and democracy in Stockholm, where she invited also candidate countries and where Serbia was represented. We are very grateful and happy that Serbia took part in this important meeting.
Yes, Sweden is an EU member for almost 30 years. So how can the experience of member states, including Sweden, help candidates to improve our society?
I think that member states like Sweden can share our best practices, our experiences. Because remember, I mean, now Sweden has enjoyed peace for 200 years. We have had military neutrality for 200 years, but 3 months after Russia's full-scale invasion, that shifted. Now we are bidding for NATO membership, and there is a strong majority in parliament and the population to do that. But anyhow, we have had time to build a strong society, a resilient society that is built on a strong social contract, where civil society has paved the way for many reforms in our country, with a lot of resistance in the beginning, like 100 and so years ago. Sweden was not the first country in the world to introduce the right to vote for women, for example. So the women's movement and other civil society movements have played a very important role in having legislators enact legislation that is free from discrimination and that guarantees accountability of the executive towards the population and the citizens. So what we are trying to do now, Sweden, which is, I admit, a very advanced society that tops many international global sort of indexes for human development, we try to share our experiences and our solutions. And we surely have challenges that we are still battling with, but then we are happy to share the solutions, how we are battling with them, with a strong citizens' participation, for example, a constant dialogue, for example, when the government wants to make new policy, we have standing mechanisms to include civil society voices. It can sometimes make things take a longer time. We need to suffer a lot of criticism, but we do know that if we include civil society from the start, when we formulate policy and when we execute policy, that policy becomes much more sustainable, because that is how we build citizens' trust and how we build a strong social contract. So that is what we are trying to showcase and share with the world.
Yes, and Sweden is one of the world leaders in environmental protection. What is crucial in order to develop awareness in the population about this issue?
I think that there is a growing engagement on behalf of the population here in Serbia when it comes to environmental protection. Sweden is proud to be Serbia's top bilateral donor on environmental protection. We work in a good partnership with the Ministry for Environmental Protection, with academia, the University of Belgrade. We work with civil society, naturally. And we also work with industries, Swedish companies that have a great resource base, that have solutions that they can offer and share with Serbian partners and peers. So I think that Serbia has made important advances in the past few years. We have been engaged on environmental protection for quite some time, and now we can start to harvest, I think, what we sowed. The EU's Green Agenda for Serbia is a magnificent tool for Serbia to benefit from, helping it accelerate reforms that will make it a better environment, a healthier environment for people in Serbia to live in. For example, Sweden and the EU has launched a pilot project with 17 municipalities all over Serbia, where we have introduced recycling of glass, plastic, carton, paper, and something that I forgot now. Anyhow, and this has to be made easy, I think, for the population to be willing to do this effort. So you have to have citizens on board. And I think that this project, Odvajamo, has been a great success because the population is interested in contributing to a better environment for themselves. Recycling is made easy. It must be easy, otherwise it's not done. And that is an experience that we can share. Because when I grew up in Sweden, there was obviously no recycling. We threw everything, in the same landfill. Today, 1% of all the waste in Sweden goes to landfills. And I know that Serbia can get there too. And another important lesson, I think, is that waste can also be a resource. It can be new energy. In Stockholm, all the buses run on biogas, for example. So it can be profitable to take care of the environment. It's not only about stringent, requirements on industry and authorities. It also creates jobs to recycle more. Another thing that we've been doing is to lay the foundation for wastewater treatment plants. We've been doing this in Niš and Čačak, and this is also going to benefit greatly the population. So I think that Serbia is making important headway, and we are proud to accompany Serbia on this important path. Of course, to meet criteria for EU membership when it comes to environmental protection, but also in general to strengthen the quality of life for everyday Serbs. We are also working, the third thing I wanted to mention is on reducing industrial pollution. And that is also something that the population greatly stands to benefit from.
Yes, and just to conclude with the question, zašto smo bolji zajedno?
I think that it is natural for people wanting to come together. We could dream of a world where there are no borders, but that is utopia. As I started this conversation, Serbia belongs to Europe. I've been living in Serbia now for 2 years. I feel very much at home. It feels very much like I'm in a European country. This is my first posting in a European country. As a diplomat, I'm used to places much further away. Serbia has a fantastic human capital, kind, generous people that wish to have the chances, the opportunities, and the privileges of, I think, being a European member. So I think that the population of Serbia deserves to become a member of the European Union and to continue building this European project together with the rest of us. We are already together. So to come back to what I said initially, my encouragement to official Serbia is to really make use of all the possibilities that the EU brings and to accelerate accession for the sake of the population of Serbia.
Yeah. Tack så mycket.
Tack så mycket. Hvala lepo.
Hvala i vama što ste nas gledali. Ostanite i pratite dalje EU podcast za tebe.